So let's take a look at the home hub example. It's a really obvious place to start because in last week's example we had 6 different classes. Okay, you may not remember that, but if you want to go back and have a look, there's 6 of them. There's the ceiling light, there's the floor lamp, table lamp, spotlight, and so on. But 3 of those classes are almost exactly the same. Can you guess which? Give me a moment to think about that. And the answer is the ceiling light, the floor lamp, and the table lamp. They all have exactly the same methods, and they store the same types of variable. Okay. The spotlight is different because it's dimmable. So if you remember last week we had a spotlight where we could change the setting. Again, using the idea is that we'd have a home hub that was voice controlled, and we'd say spotlight up, spotlight down, and that would change the brightness of the light. The ceiling light, the floor lamp, and the table lamp, you could just turn them on or turn them off. That's all you can do. So they're the same, they have the same methods, and they store the same types of variable, which is whether it's on or off and what its name is. So ceiling light, floor lamp, and so on. So we can replace them in our code with just one class. All we need to do is pass in the name to the constructor so that the thing that we're creating knows what it is. Okay, so here's our new class. It's very, very similar to the previous one. The only difference is, or one of the previous ones, very, very similar to the table lamp or the ceiling light, except that now we're passing in a name and we're storing it inside the class. Okay, so self.name. If I move my mouse, you can see self.name. Sorry, self.name is equal to name, and name is a variable passed in from the code that creates this thing. So, then in order to use that, all we need to do in our main constructor, in our main code, the controller code, is just first of all we need to import the light class, just like we did before, but we only need one import statement now. And now when we want a ceiling light, we just say ceiling light is a light object. So we use the light constructor. If you remember, we call these things constructors, and that calls the init method inside the class. One is going to be a ceiling light, one is going to be a floor lamp, one is going to be a table lamp. So we reusing this thing. So we've got 3 different objects here. One is the ceiling light, one is the floor lamp, one is the table lamp. But they're using the same design. They're using the same class to build them. Often, in terms of what we call these things, we often call these objects so that they can be called objects or they can be called instances of the class. So the ceiling light, the floor lamp, and the table lamp, these variables in our code here are instances of the light class, or they're objects. They're objects because they've got, because we use this constructor that is defined inside the class, and it sets up data and methods. Okay, how do we use them? Well, that's a very common way of doing it. You create a basic design, and then you use it to create lots of different versions of that design. So often you have different objects that are passed different values when they're created, but not necessarily. You can have multiple objects that are the same thing. So you could just create lots and lots of ceiling lights. Okay, so you don't have to give them different names. It will be a bit weird because our controller code wouldn't know which one to switch on if you had 4 different ceiling lights and they all had the same name. But you could do that. And you can modify them. They don't have to stick with that name. So if I want to rename the table lamp, I can just do TableLamp.name equals reading lamp, and that will then change the variable inside the object. Okay, and the advantage of doing this, why do we do this? It's got considerably less code. So there's 181 lines rather than 238. So that's nearly 60 lines of code that we've saved because we're reusing the light code. And so we don't have to have the 3 different classes, which essentially we're doing the same thing. We're replacing them with one class that takes the place of all of them. And this is a really important part of object-oriented design. It's all about saving time, saving typing. I think, as I mentioned, programmers are lazy. They want to do as little typing as possible. And this is a nice way to do it by reusing the same bit of code over and over again inside our app. The other thing we could do actually is merge the spotlight and the heating classes. So if you remember those things from last week, spotlight and heating both have they can be turned on and off, but they can also be turned up and down. And although the spotlight is controlling the brightness and the heating is controlling the temperature, in fact, it's the same. If you look at the code, it's exactly the same, other than one is brightness, one is temperature. So they can go up and down. So we could merge those two, but I'm going to leave that for now, and we'll wait till towards the end of the course when we get to a topic called abstraction. In fact, I think it's the last lecture. We'll talk about abstraction, and we'll merge those two things, or we'll create a way of reusing code that manages to merge those two things in a slightly different way. Okay, so wait for that. That's the Home Hub. Let's look at another example in a minute. I'm going to do this in another video.